Universalist service. This session today will help you share an expert's experience on leadership as it works in the nonprofit and voluntary organizations, exploring field service projects in Africa and third world countries, a view of leadership training, reconciliation, and forgiveness from a woman who served as the services director of the Unitarian Universalist Committee in Africa. Atama Aklay has worked around the world on issues of leadership, conflict resolution, negotiation, microcredit, health, genital mutilation, gender insecurity, and participatory quality education. She has chaired sessions at the United Nations Women's Conferences and has facilitated many international meetings. Atama was also a chief facilitating team member for Inclusive Security, Women Waging Peace. This is an initiative of the Women in Public Policy Program at the Kennedy School of Government. Currently, Dr. Aklay is the Director of Programs at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. In this capacity, she works in Africa, the Americas, Asia, and the Middle East. She says, "I am only an apprentice in the field of human rights, learning each day to question and challenge unjust power structures. Human rights work moves me from a place of easy excuses to a space of seeking real, just solutions. It gives me hope and the courage to believe that the world we live in can change." And she was just telling us at lunch how one of her main programs right now is to bring in people who've experienced war and are now coming out of a war-torn country, to bring them to Cambridge, to give them a chance to learn about leadership, to network with each other, to have an audience with policymakers in Washington, and have them listen to the girls and to the women who are going to be the leaders in other countries. She is very instrumental in shaping the leadership of the world, and I think you will join me in welcoming Dr. Aklay.
Thank you so much. I decided to sit. I actually don't enjoy standing when other people are sitting. So I'm charged to give you leadership from the ground up. So I hope I do that well. If I don't, call me on it. So how I chose to do this is I'll introduce the topic of leadership, and then I will launch into different experiences, and I'll give you an example of leadership from the Sudan, Southern Sudan, and then I'll move into Liberia, and then I'll move into Rwanda. And I have more examples, but then I'll leave time for questions. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. So I was charged here to talk to you about NGO leadership from the ground up and voluntary organizations leadership from the ground up. So I'll share with you experiences that I've seen, that have worked, and the challenges that people face on the ground. People on the ground really don't have PowerPoint, so I didn't do a PowerPoint on purpose, and I always do that. I just came from Haiti on Thursday, so where we are running programs as well. So other than what is on my resume, I'd like to tell the story of what got me into social justice and human rights work. When I was 3 days old, my mother, who was a school teacher, are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, my mother, who was a school teacher, I was born at the brink of the colonial period in Kenya, Eastern Africa. And my mother was a school teacher who, at that time, they were only given 3 days maternity leave. Yes. And so, the Monday after I had been born, my mother had gotten her 3 days maternity leave. She took me, along with my grandmother, to the school where she taught. Word got around to the colonial leaders, and by evening, my mother and I had been sent to prison. And we were in prison for 10 days During that time, women and male allies rallied around the issue of maternity leave. That put me in a space of being the poster child for maternity leave in Kenya. Women now get 6 months paid maternity leave in Kenya, and men get three months.
Wow.
So from that time, women got paid maternity leave. And when you are born as a jailbird, you can't leave that behind. Another instance that has informed what I am is, as a little girl, we worked on a poem about the wildlife in Kenya. At that time, ivory was being cut from elephants, and people were buying it. I don't know how many of you know the story of ivory. Some people in parts of the world believe that if you make an ornament or a ring from ivory, your wife becomes very sexy. So many people buy ivory to make rings so that they give to their wives to become sexy. Tell me how those two things connect. I wrote a poem about elephants need to exist with all their body parts. And I was very young, and my group of young girls were taken to go to the first International UN Conference of Women to recite our poem. And I saw a group of so many women, like one big woman. I don't know what was talked at that conference, but I remember these multiple women, just many, many women all together. And that has lived in me, and I think it has contributed to how I do my work. So that is about me, some of me that is not in the resume. So NGO leadership, as we all know, there are three important things about NGO leadership. And I don't want to be a teacher to you because I am partly teacher as well. I teach at Harvard sometimes. And I don't want to teach you, you know. I think these things you know, and I don't want just to talk at you. So NGOs have a mission. And the mission, I always tell people, it is why we exist. Why do we exist? And then it has values. What is important to us? Then they have the overall strategic goal. What we want to be. Then a strategy. What is our game plan to get there? To that place where we want to be. Which leads to strategic objectives, measures, and targets. Those things you can hear in any classroom. So the first two, the values and mission, I always call the mission the end. The overall strategy, you know, and the strategy itself, I call it the means to get there. And many organizations that run well have that component. What do we judge leaders in NGOs with? We call them to influence a group or individuals to achieve a common goal. We always want them to provide us a strategic direction and inspiration. We want them many times to initiate change. We want them to encourage new learning and develop distinct organizational culture. So those are things, I can just say that and then leave this room, and that is it, really, what we call them to be. We are now